The air in the garage is thick with the smell of new car. It's a cloying, synthetic scent of plastic, leather, and something else, something like triumph. Not my triumph. His. My husband, Mark, stands beside the machine, a gleaming silver beast of a sedan that looks entirely out of place next to my 10-year-old minivan with its collection of dings and faded bumper stickers. He runs a hand along the hood, a possessive, almost tender gesture that makes my stomach clench. His smile is blinding, the kind he usually saves for closing a big sale. But this isn't a sale. This is an acquisition. A secret one. The polished chrome grille glitters under the single bare bulb, and it seems to mock the dusty boxes of Christmas decorations and the stack of Lily's old-school projects piled in the corner. He hasn't seen me yet. He's lost in his moment, admiring the sharp lines, the ridiculously oversized wheels. He looks like a stranger in my garage, a man from a different, shinier life. A life I have apparently not been invited to. My hand tightens on the doorframe, the wood pressing into my palm. The silence is heavy, broken only by the hum of the old freezer. And in that silence, a single, cold question forms in my mind, sharp and clear as ice. Where did the money come from? If you've ever had a moment where your world tilted on its axis, a moment you knew nothing would ever be the same, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're new here, please subscribe. It helps me share these stories, and I'm grateful you're here to listen. Just last week, our world was small and solid. It was built on routine and shared dreams. Mornings were a frantic ballet of toast, backpacks, and hurried kisses at the door. Evenings were for homework at the kitchen table, the smell of whatever I was cooking, and Mark's stories from work. Our life wasn't glamorous. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood where the lawns were mostly neat, and the biggest excitement was the annual block party. Mark sold industrial hardware. I worked part-time as a bookkeeper for a local dental office. It was a life of careful budgets and calculated splurges, a weekend trip to the coast once a year, pizza on Fridays, a new pair of running shoes when the old ones were truly worn out. The centerpiece of our financial world, the sun around which our entire budget orbited, was Lily's college fund. It wasn't just a savings account, it was a testament, a monument to 16 years of sacrifice and hope. It started with a $50 check from my mother when Lily was born. We added to it every month, without fail. My yearly bonus from the dental office went straight in. Mark's commission checks, when they were good, were split, half for a necessary home repair, half for the fund. We skipped expensive vacations, drove our cars until they begged for mercy, and brewed coffee at home. Every deposit was a prayer for her future. A future where she wouldn't have to worry the way we did. A future at a school with ivy-covered walls, a place that would nurture her brilliant, curious mind. Lily was our masterpiece. She had my stubbornness and Mark's easy charm, but her intellect was all her own. She'd devour books in a single sitting, her brow furrowed in concentration. She could argue politics with the passion of a seasoned debate champion and then spend hours sketching the delicate veins of a leaf she'd found in the yard. Her dream was to study environmental science at a top-tier university on the other side of the country. The brochures were tacked to a corkboard in her room, glossy pictures of sprawling campuses and smiling students. That fund was the bridge from our quiet suburban street to that bright, limitless future. It was our promise to her. The account statement came quarterly, and we'd look at it together at the kitchen table. Mark would trace the rising balance with his finger. "Look at that, Ratch," he'd say, a proud tremor in his voice. "We're doing it. We're really doing it for her," and I would feel a warmth spread through my chest, a deep and abiding sense of security. We were a team. We were building something that mattered. The last statement had red $87 for 5217. It felt like a fortune. It was the exact cost of 4 years' tuition, room, and board at her first-choice school. We'd hit our goal a year early. It was our greatest achievement, a tangible symbol of our love for our daughter. In the last few months, though, a subtle dissonance had crept into our domestic harmony. Mark was working later. "Big project at work," he'd say, waving a dismissive hand. He was more attached to his phone, angling it away from me when a text came in. When I'd ask who it was, he'd mutter, "Just work stuff." He bought new clothes, stylish shirts, and expensive jeans that seemed out of place with the rest of his worn-out wardrobe. He started going to the gym. "Got to stay healthy," he'd explained, flexing a bicep with a self-satisfied smirk. I'd chalked it up to a midlife crisis, a harmless vanity. I'd even been a little proud of him for taking better care of himself. I told myself that the distance I felt was just the natural ebb and flow of a long marriage. We were busy. We were tired. We'd find our way back to each other. I never imagined he was building a bridge to a different life and that he was about to set fire to ours. The confrontation didn't happen in the garage. I couldn't do it there, with that monstrous silver car as a witness. I retreated into the house, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I waited for him to come inside, my mind a chaotic storm of possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. A secret inheritance? A lottery win he hadn't told me about? A massive bonus? None of them felt right. The feeling in my gut was not one of happy surprise. It was a cold, slithering dread. He walked in, whistling, keys jingling in his hand. He tossed them onto the little ceramic dish by the door, where we always put our keys. They landed with a clatter that sounded like a gunshot in the silent house. "Hey, you're quiet tonight," he said, pulling a carton of milk from the fridge. He didn't look at me. "See the new ride?" His voice was casual, too casual. It was the voice he used when he was trying to sell something. "Where did you get the money, Mark?" My voice was low, barely a whisper. It didn't sound like my own. He stopped, the milk carton halfway to his glass. He finally turned to look at me, and his smile faltered. He saw the look on my face. "It's a lease," he said quickly. "Incredible deal. 0 down. You wouldn't believe the monthly payments." It was a plausible lie. A good lie. But I knew his finances as well as I knew my own. I did our taxes. I balanced our checkbook. There was no room in our budget for an incredible deal on a luxury sedan. "Let me see the paperwork," I said, my voice gaining a little strength. His face hardened. The charming salesman vanished, replaced by a cornered stranger.
"Why?"
"You don't trust me?" "I want to see the paperwork." Mark, the silence stretched. He put the milk back in the fridge with a thud. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms over his chest. It was a defensive posture, a wall going up between us. And in that moment I knew. I didn't know the specifics, but I knew the foundation of my life had just cracked. I didn't need to see the paperwork anymore. I had my phone in my hand. My fingers felt numb as I opened our banking app. I navigated to the savings account, the one labeled Lily's Future. My breath caught in my throat. The balance, which had been a source of such pride and security just days ago, was now a cruel joke. $217. The rest was gone. A single, massive withdrawal made 2 days prior. $87, 45,000. I looked up from the screen, my vision blurring. He was watching me, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "You promised," I whispered, the words tearing at my throat. "We promised her." "Ratch, I can explain," he started, taking a step toward me. "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. The phone slipped from my grasp and clattered onto the tile floor. I didn't care. "Just tell me why," he sighed, a long, theatrical exhalation of a man burdened by the foolishness of others. "It was an investment," he said, as if that explained everything. "I met someone. Someone who believes in me. She's starting a business, a boutique. I wanted to help her. To invest in her." "You met someone?" The words were hollow, empty of meaning. My brain couldn't process it all at once. The money, the car, the someone. "We haven't been happy for a long time, Rachel. You have to admit that," he said, his voice taking on a tone of patronizing reasonableness. "We've just been going through the motions. I found someone who makes me feel alive." He was rewriting our history, erasing 17 years of shared life with a few careless sentences. The boutique, the investment, it was all nonsense. I looked past him, through the kitchen window, at the silver car gleaming under the porch light. "The car?" I said, my voice flat. The car is for her, isn't it? He had the decency to look away. Her old one was unreliable. I wanted her to be safe. The absurdity of it was staggering. He had stolen our daughter's future to buy a toy for his mistress, and he was framing it as an act of noble concern. The dam inside me broke. A wave of fury, so pure and hot it scalded me, surged through my veins. Her name, I snarled. What is her name? He flinched. Chloe, Chloe. I repeated the name. It tasted like poison. You took Lily's college fund, money we saved for 17 years, money for her education, her entire future, and you bought a car for a woman named Chloe? I'm going to pay it back, he insisted, his voice rising. The business will be a huge success. We'll have more money than we ever dreamed of. This is for us, for our future. There is no us anymore, I screamed, the sound ripping from my chest. There is no future. You lit a match to it. For a car. At that moment, a floorboard creaked in the hallway. We both froze. Lily stood there, her face pale, her eyes wide with a horror that mirrored my own. She was holding her calculus textbook, her knuckles white where she gripped it. She had heard everything. The fight. The money. The name. Her father's betrayal was not just of me, but of her. He had not just broken our marriage, he had stolen her dream. Mark's face crumpled. Lilybug, he stammered, using the pet name he'd given her when she was a toddler. It's not what it sounds like, but it was. It was exactly what it sounded like. Lily didn't cry. She just stared at him, her gaze filled with a profound and terrible disappointment that was far worse than tears. She looked at the man who was supposed to be her hero, the man who had taught her to ride a bike and checked for monsters under her bed, and she saw a thief. Then she looked at me, her eyes asking a question I couldn't answer. She dropped her textbook. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, the sound of a future crashing to the ground. Then she turned and walked back to her room, closing the door softly behind her. The click of the latch was the final, definitive sound of our family breaking apart. I told him to leave. The words came out cold and steady, forged in the wreckage of my heart. He tried to argue, to bargain. He spoke of his things, of where he would go. I pointed to the door. Go to Chloe, I said. Go to your investment. He packed a bag in a furious, clumsy haste, stuffing clothes into a duffel bag, his movements jerky and resentful. He was the one who had been wronged. He was the victim. He slammed the front door on his way out, the house shuddering with the force of his departure. And then there was silence. A silence that was heavier and more suffocating than any noise. I sank to the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinets, and I finally let myself break. I cried for my marriage, for the man I thought I knew. I cried for the years of trust that had been incinerated in a single, selfish act. But most of all, I cried for my daughter, alone in her room, facing a betrayal that no 17-year-old should ever have to comprehend. The days that followed were a blur of gray numbness. I moved through the house like a ghost, performing the mechanics of living without any real awareness. I made coffee I didn't drink. I washed dishes that I didn't remember using. The silence was my constant companion, a presence that filled every empty space. Lily was even quieter. She'd emerge from her room for meals, her eyes downcast, her shoulders slumped. The light had gone out of her. The vibrant, opinionated girl who filled the house with laughter and music was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed wraith. We didn't talk about it. The subject was a gaping wound in the middle of our lives, and we were both too afraid to touch it, for fear we would both bleed out. I called a lawyer, a man a friend from work had recommended. I sat in his sterile, beige office, clutching a cup of lukewarm coffee, and I told him the story. I watched his face, hoping for a spark of outrage, a promise of swift justice. Instead, I saw only mild professional interest. It was a joint savings account, he asked, tapping his pen on a legal pad. I nodded. Then I'm afraid it's not a criminal matter, he said, his tone matter-of-fact. He had legal access to the funds. As far as the bank and the police are concerned, he withdrew his own money. It's a marital asset. We can argue for an unequal division of property in the divorce, citing dissipation of assets, but he trailed off, letting the unspoken words hang in the air. But it would be a long, messy fight. There were no guarantees. He might be ordered to pay it back in installments over years, maybe even decades. Justice, it seemed, was a slow, bureaucratic process that had little to do with what was right and what was wrong. I left his office feeling more hopeless than when I'd walked in. The law, which was supposed to protect people like us, offered only paperwork and protracted battles. It felt like being told that the man who had burned down my house couldn't be arrested because his name was also on the mortgage. The world felt fundamentally unjust. I had to pick up more hours at the dental office, and I took on a weekend job stocking shelves at a grocery store. The physical exhaustion was a welcome distraction from the emotional agony. I'd come home late at night, my feet aching and my body sore, and fall into bed, too tired to think, too tired to feel. But the worry was a constant hum beneath the surface. College application deadlines were looming. Deposits would be due soon. Without the fund, Lily's first-choice schools were out of the question. Even state schools would be a struggle. I saw her dream, our dream, withering on the vine. Mark, meanwhile, was living his new, shiny life. He and Chloe were not discreet. He'd moved into her sleek, modern apartment complex, the kind with a pool and a gym. And then came the social media posts. A friend, with the best of intentions, sent me a screenshot. "I thought you should know," she texted. It was a picture of Chloe, a stunningly beautiful woman in her late 20s, leaning against the silver car. She was laughing, her head thrown back, a picture of carefree bliss. The caption read, "Best boyfriend in the world surprised me with my dream car. Feeling so blessed. Hashtag new car, hashtag best life, hashtag loved." Each post was a meticulously crafted dagger aimed at my heart. There were pictures of them at fancy restaurants, clinking wine glasses. Pictures of them on a weekend getaway to a charming coastal town, the silver car parked artfully in the background. Chloe's boutique, funded by my daughter's future, had its own Instagram page, filled with pictures of expensive clothes and accessories. She was living a life paid for by our sacrifices. The injustice of it was a physical weight pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. I felt powerless, a victim in a story someone else was writing. I watched Lily retreat further into herself. Her grades, once impeccable, began to slide. She stopped talking about college. The brochures on her corkboard seemed to mock her. One evening, I found her in her room, staring at the acceptance letter from her dream school, which had arrived a week before Mark had left. It had been a cause for celebration. Now it was just a piece of paper, a reminder of what had been stolen. "We can't afford it, can we?" she asked, her voice devoid of emotion. I wanted to lie. I wanted to promise her that I would fix it, that everything would be okay. But I was tired of lies. "No, honey," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't think we can," she nodded slowly, carefully folding the letter and putting it back in the envelope. She didn't cry. That was the worst part. She just looked empty. That night, something inside me shifted. The grief and the despair had burned themselves out, leaving behind something harder, colder. It was rage. A quiet, focused rage. I would not let him destroy her. I would not let them win. I didn't know how, but I knew I would find a way to fight back. I would not be a victim in his story. I would be the author of my own. The turning point didn't come with a thunderclap or a dramatic revelation. It arrived quietly late one Tuesday night, in a dusty box in the back of a closet. I was on a desperate hunt for old tax documents, searching for any asset, any forgotten stock or bond that might be worth something. The house was quiet, Lily was asleep, and the only sound was the rustle of old papers. I pulled out a faded accordion file labeled Household Finances. Inside was a chaotic jumble of old mortgage statements, car titles, and bank documents from a decade ago. My fingers brushed against a thick sheaf of papers, stapled together. The letterhead was from the bank where we'd opened Lily's college fund, 16 years ago. I almost tossed it aside, but something made me pause. I remembered that day. Lily was just a baby, asleep in her carrier. Mark and I had sat in front of a banker's polished desk, feeling so adult, so responsible. We'd wanted to do everything right, to make sure the money was protected, that it was unequivocally hers. The banker, a kind-faced man named Mr. Henderson, had recommended a specific type of account. It's called a UTMA account, he'd explained. A Uniform Transfers to Minors Act account. The money legally belongs to the minor, to your daughter. You and your husband are simply the custodians of the account until she reaches the age of majority in this state, which is 18-inch. My heart started to beat a little faster. I scanned the document, my eyes flying across the dense, legal jargon. And then I saw it. A single, beautiful, glorious paragraph. It stated, in no uncertain terms, that the funds deposited into the account were an irrevocable gift to the minor. The custodian had a fiduciary duty to manage the funds for the minor's benefit and could not use the funds for their own personal use. To do so was not a civil matter. It was misappropriation of custodial property. It was a felony. I read the paragraph again. And again. The words seemed to lift off the page, shimmering with possibility. This wasn't a marital asset. It was never a marital asset. It wasn't his money to take. It wasn't even our money. It was Lily's. Legally, unequivocally, and irrevocably Lily's. He hadn't just been an unfaithful husband. He had been a criminal. He was a thief who had stolen from his own child. A profound sense of calm washed over me, displacing the frantic anxiety that had been my constant companion for weeks. The rage was still there, but it was no longer a wild, destructive fire. It was a cold blue flame. I had found the weapon I needed. It was sharper than outrage, more powerful than tears. It was the law. But I wasn't going to call the police. Not yet. A police report, an arrest that was too impersonal, too distant. Mark and his mistress had made this personal. They had reveled in our pain, flaunting their happiness on social media, rubbing our noses in their betrayal. They deserved to feel the consequences up close. They needed to see the face of the person whose future they had so carelessly discarded. The next morning, I made coffee and toast, just like any other day. But something was different. The air in the house felt lighter. When Lily came into the kitchen, I saw the familiar weariness in her eyes, the slump in her shoulders. "Honey," I said, my voice steady. "I need to talk to you about something." I think I found a way. I spread the bank document on the kitchen table, the same table where we had once celebrated our savings goals. I pointed to the paragraph. I explained what it meant, my voice low and even. I watched her as she read it. I saw her eyes widen, her back straighten. A flicker of something I hadn't seen in weeks, a spark of defiance, of fight, ignited in her gaze. The victim was gone. The girl who had looked so empty, so defeated, was replaced by a young woman who had just been handed a sword. "He broke the law," she said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and dawning fury. "Yes," I said. "He did. So we can get the money back?" "We can do more than that," I said. "We can make him understand what he did." We sat there for a long time, the two of us, a council of war at the kitchen table. We weren't just planning to get the money back. We were planning to reclaim our dignity. The plan that began to form was not born of simple revenge. It was about justice. A very specific, very personal kind of justice. Lily, who had just turned 18 2 months prior, was no longer a minor. She was the legal owner of the account, the sole beneficiary of the stolen funds. She was the plaintiff. The power was now in her hands. The next day, I made another call. Not to the kind-faced family lawyer who had offered me condolences and complicated civil procedures. This time, I found a shark. Her name was Diana Sterling, and her website was filled with testimonials from clients she'd helped in cases of financial fraud and embezzlement. Her photo showed a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. When we met her in her sleek, downtown office, she listened to our story without interruption. She examined the UTMA document, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned back in her leather chair and looked at Lily. "They humiliated you," Diana said. It wasn't a question. They flaunted their theft. They took your future and turned it into a lifestyle brand on Instagram. Lily nodded, her jaw tight. What do you want? Diana asked her directly, ignoring me. Do you want to send him to jail? We can do that. A call to the district attorney's office would be all it takes. Lily was silent for a moment. I saw the struggle in her eyes. This was her father, after all. I don't want him in jail, she said finally, her voice surprisingly strong. I want him to feel what I felt. I want her to feel it. I want them to understand that what they took wasn't just money. It was everything. A slow smile spread across Diana's face. I like you, she said. Okay. We won't go to the DA. Not yet. We'll give them an opportunity to make this right. But we're going to do it on our terms. We're going to make it theatrical. For the next week, Diana's office became our war room. She drafted a series of documents that were, in their own way, works of art. There was a formal demand letter, citing the specific criminal statutes Mark had violated, detailing the penalties, up to 10 years in prison and hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. It demanded the immediate return of the principal amount, plus interest, plus punitive damages for emotional distress. There was a notice of intent to file a civil suit for conversion and breach of fiduciary duty. And there was the masterstroke, a notice of intent to file a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office, a copy of which would also be sent to Mark's employer. His entire professional life was on the line. But we weren't just going to put these documents in the mail. That was too easy, too clean. Diana had another idea. Humiliation is a powerful motivator, she'd said, her eyes gleaming. Public humiliation, even more so. She had her assistant design and print a set of stickers. They were large, rectangular, and printed on bright, unmissable fluorescent orange paper. In bold, black, official-looking letters they read, Property subject to legal seizure, pending felony theft investigation, case #DC 481516. The case number was fake, of course, but it looked terrifyingly real. Lily held one of the stickers in her hand, testing the adhesive back. I looked at my daughter, and I saw a warrior. Her grief had been transmuted into strength. Her pain had been forged into purpose. She was no longer the girl who had dropped her calculus book on the floor. She was the woman who was about to deliver the final exam. The days leading up to our counteroffensive were a strange mix of terror and exhilarating focus. We were a two-woman commando team on a mission. We became private investigators, our quarry a 20-something boutique owner with a penchant for Valencia filters. Chloe's digital footprint was a map leading us straight to her. Her Instagram was public, a curated gallery of her perfect life. She tagged her location constantly. We learned her favorite coffee shop, the yoga studio she attended on Tuesdays, and, most importantly, the address of her boutique, Chic and Company. We knew her work schedule because she posted it in her stories every Monday. Come see me this week. I'll be in the shop Wednesday, Friday, and all day Saturday. The plan was set for Saturday. High noon. The busiest time for a trendy shop in an upscale outdoor mall. Diana had coached Lily relentlessly. They role-played the confrontation, with Diana playing a hysterical Chloe. She taught Lily to stay calm, to speak clearly, and to never, ever raise her voice. Your power is in your stillness, Diana had told her. Let them be the ones to fall apart the night before. Neither of us slept much. We sat in the living room, the lights off, the stack of legal documents and the roll of orange stickers on the coffee table between us, like a holy relic. Are you scared? I asked her. She looked at the stickers, her expression thoughtful. I was, she admitted. But I'm not anymore. I'm just ready. This isn't just for me, Mom. It's for you, too. In that moment, the last 17 years of motherhood, the sleepless nights, the scraped knees, the parent-teacher conferences, all of it coalesced into a wave of pride so intense it almost brought me to my knees. We had been through hell, but we had come out the other side, not broken, but bonded in fire. Saturday morning was unnaturally bright. The sun was sharp, the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Lily dressed with care. Not in her usual jeans and a hoodie, but in a simple, elegant dark blue dress, the one she'd planned to wear for her graduation. She looked older, poised, and powerful. I was the getaway driver, my hands slick with sweat on the steering wheel of my beat-up minivan. I felt sick with nerves. What if this went wrong? What if Chloe called the police? What if Mark showed up and got violent? My brain was a whirlwind of worst-case scenarios. Lily, on the other hand, was an island of calm. She sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, the large manila envelope containing the documents resting in her lap. She wasn't fidgeting. She wasn't anxiously checking her phone. She was simply present. We pulled into the parking lot of the mall and found a spot with a clear view of the boutique's entrance. And there it was, the silver sedan. It was parked directly in front of the store, in a prime spot, gleaming arrogantly in the sunlight. It was a monument to their betrayal. For a moment, I felt the old, familiar sting of pain and helplessness. Then I looked at my daughter. She was unrolling the orange stickers, her movements deliberate and precise. The pain receded, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "It's time," she said. She took a deep breath, opened the car door, and stepped out. I watched her walk across the parking lot, her back straight, her stride confident. She didn't look like a heartbroken teenager. She looked like an avenging angel in a blue dress. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This was it. Everything hinged on the next few minutes. I watched as she pushed open the glass door of the boutique and disappeared inside. I could see through the large front window. The shop was busy, filled with well-dressed women browsing through racks of clothes. I saw Lily approach the counter. I saw Chloe look up, a bright, professional smile plastered on her face, ready to assist a customer. I saw Lily say something, her expression calm. I saw her hand the thick manila envelope to Chloe. Chloe's smile wavered, replaced by a look of confusion. She took the envelope, her brow furrowed. And then, Lily turned and walked out of the store. The first part of the plan was complete. She walked directly to the silver car. With a fluid, practiced motion, she peeled the back off the first sticker and smoothed it onto the driver's side window. The fluorescent orange was a violent slash of color against the pristine silver. She moved to the front of the car, placing another sticker squarely in the middle of the hood. Another on the windshield, directly in the driver's line of sight. Another on the trunk. Each placement was a punctuation mark in a sentence of retribution. Inside the store, I saw Chloe rip open the envelope. Her eyes scanned the first page. Her face went from confused to shocked to utterly horrified. The color drained from her cheeks. The legal documents fell from her trembling hands, scattering across the floor. She looked up, her eyes wide with panic, and saw Lily methodically plastering the car with bright orange warnings of a felony investigation. Chloe let out a sound. I couldn't hear it, but I saw it, a strangled cry of disbelief. She burst out of the store, her expensive heels clattering on the pavement. People were starting to notice. Shoppers were slowing down, their curiosity piqued by the drama unfolding in front of them. "What are you doing?" Chloe shrieked, her voice high and shrill with panic. "What is this? Get away from my car." Lily calmly placed the final sticker on the rear passenger window. She turned to face Chloe, her expression unreadable. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet but carried across the parking lot with chilling clarity. "It was never your car," Lily said. She gestured toward the boutique. "Just like none of that was ever your money. It was my future. It was my education. And I'm here to take it back." Chloe stared at her, speechless. Her eyes darted from Lily's cold, calm face to the terrifying words on the stickers. I could see the moment the reality of her situation crashed down on her. This wasn't some jealous ex-wife making a scene. This was a legal nightmare, unfolding in the most public way imaginable. Her boss, a chic woman with a severe haircut, was now standing in the doorway of the boutique, her arms crossed, her expression one of pure fury. Chloe's carefully constructed world of luxury and blessings was imploding. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial. "Mark, you need to get here now." "Now," she screamed into the phone. Some crazy girl she's putting stickers all over the car. She's saying you're a criminal. Mark must have been nearby, because it only took him 10 minutes to arrive. He screeched into the parking lot in a friend's truck, his face a mask of confusion and anger. He jumped out and stormed toward the scene. He saw the car, covered in the garish orange declarations of his crime. He saw the small crowd of onlookers that had gathered. He saw Chloe, sobbing hysterically. And then he saw Lily. She hadn't moved. She was just standing there, watching him, her arms crossed. Her silence was more damning than any accusation. Their eyes met across the silver hood of the car he had bought with her future. And in his daughter's eyes, he saw no tears, no pleading, no weakness. He saw only the cool, dispassionate gaze of a judge who had already passed sentence. The swagger drained out of him. The anger on his face was replaced by a dawning, sickening wave of fear. He had been so sure of his power, so confident in his ability to control the narrative. But he had underestimated us. He had underestimated his daughter. He had thought he was holding all the cards, not realizing we were holding the entire deck. In the bright Saturday sun, surrounded by strangers, his public and private worlds collided and shattered. He was exposed. A fool. A fraud. A thief. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He just stood there, a man utterly and completely ruined by the quiet strength of the daughter he had betrayed. The fallout was not a storm, but a swift and silent demolition. The public humiliation was the catalyst that made everything else happen at lightning speed. Chloe, faced with the prospect of being implicated as an accessory to a felony, turned on Mark with the ferocity of a cornered animal. Her love, it turned out, was directly proportional to his bank balance and inversely proportional to his legal troubles. We didn't have to do anything else. They imploded on their own. Diana received a frantic, pleading phone call from Mark less than an hour after the incident at the mall. He was terrified. The threat of a criminal record, of his employer finding out, of actual jail time, it was a reality he was completely unprepared for. The charming, confident salesman was gone, replaced by a desperate, blubbering man begging for a deal. Diana was merciless. She laid out our terms, her voice like chips of ice. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a list of demands. First, the immediate return of the full principal amount, $87,450. Second, an additional $10,000 for Lily's emotional distress. Third, full payment of all of Diana's legal fees. And fourth, it was all to be paid within 72 hours via a certified cashier's check. There would be no payment plan. No promises of future earnings from a mythical boutique. Just the cold, hard cash. Mark panicked. He didn't have the money. He had spent it. He begged for more time. Diana's response was simple. 72 hours, Mark. Or my next call is to the district attorney. The clock is ticking. He sold the car. He had to sell it back to the dealership at a significant loss. It wasn't enough. We heard through the grapevine that he had to go to his own parents, confess everything, and beg them for a loan to cover the rest. The humiliation must have been exquisite. Chloe, seeing that the money train had not just derailed but plunged off a cliff, packed her bags. She was gone before the cashier's check was even delivered to Diana's office. She posted one last Instagram story, a picture of a sunset with the caption, "On to new adventures." Hashtag self-love, hashtag goodbye toxic energy. And then she vanished from our lives as quickly as she had entered them. 71 hours later, a courier delivered a crisp envelope to Diana's office. Inside was a cashier's check for the full amount. Lily and I sat in Diana's office as she slid it across the polished table toward us. I stared at the numbers, the long string of digits that represented so much pain and so much struggle. It was just a piece of paper, but it felt like a peace treaty. It felt like a victory. "It's done," Diana said, a rare, genuine smile on her face. "He'll be paying off his parents for years. His credit is shot. And from what I hear, his employer has put him on administrative leave. You didn't just get the money back, Lily. You took back your power." Lily took the check, her fingers tracing the numbers. She looked not triumphant, but serene. The anger had served its purpose. Now, there was just a quiet sense of closure. The very next day, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. It was from Lily's dream school. It was an official welcome packet, complete with housing information and a letter offering her a small academic scholarship. She had done it. She had earned it. Her dream, which had been so brutally snatched away, was hers again. We sat on the front porch, reading through the materials, the afternoon sun warm on our faces. The world felt right again. Not the same as it was before, that innocence was gone forever, but it was whole. We were whole. A week later, a moving truck pulled up to the house across the street. Mark had been staying there, in his friend's spare room. We watched from the living room window as he loaded the last of his boxes into the truck. He looked smaller, diminished. A man hollowed out by his own choices. He glanced over at our house once, his expression unreadable. Then he climbed into the truck and drove away. There was no sadness in watching him go. There was no anger. There was just nothing. He was a chapter of our lives that was now closed. Lily and I didn't have a big celebration. We didn't throw a party. We just deposited the check into a new account, this one in Lily's name only. That evening, we ordered pizza and watched a movie, curled up on the couch together. It was simple. It was normal. And it was the most beautiful celebration I could have ever imagined. Justice, I realized, isn't always about fire and brimstone. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's about rebuilding what was broken, about reclaiming what was lost. We didn't just get the money back. We got our peace back. We got our future back. And in the quiet strength of my daughter, I saw the most profound kind of victory there is, the refusal to be defined by the people who try to break you. Thanks for being here with me through this. It means more than you know. Hearing your stories and knowing where you're listening from, what time it is in your world, it makes this feel less like a monologue and more like a conversation. If you haven't already, subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life. Until next time.